Hello, welcome to Ogre's Kitchen. I'm Chef Ogre. Let's check our prep list and see what we got cooking today. Today, we head off to Ogre's Cauldron, where we get a taste of the random culinary. Today's video, we're going to be discussing base level basics, the core foundational skills for working in the kitchen. Now, we're not going to go into super specific details on all of these basics, but rather go over what I think are the top 5 culinary basics that everyone should know when you're getting into cooking, whether it's the industry or even cooking at home. Now, usually, if you're cooking at school or you're taking any type of culinary training, these are going to be the items that you're probably going to be taught first. They're the foundations to cooking, and it's important that you learn these before you go on to bigger things. Doesn't mean that you can't take on a more ambitious task, but it's going to be a lot easier if you know these base level basics. So let's go on to number 1. Number 1 is safety. And we break safety up into kind of two different parts. One is facility safety, and the other one is food safety. We'll focus on facility safety first. So it should always go without saying that safety is first, and the kitchen is no different. And many people don't think of safety as a skill, but really it is. And just like any other skill, the more you practice it, the better you're going to get, and the more natural you'll get at it. So in a kitchen, you have all sorts of things. You have sharp implements, you have hot surfaces, you have open fire, knives. And I'll tell you, looking at this picture right here, anybody who's worked in a professional kitchen, you more than likely have gotten yourself on this blade at least once. And it's just like a paper cut. It's never really all that bad of a cut, but you're going to know it's there whole rest of the day. Also, like I said, you have open flames in a kitchen. And even in a home kitchen, even if you don't have open flame, you have really hot surfaces which can turn into an open flame if you're not careful. So really the main points for facility safety are ensuring that your tools and equipment are in good working order and are well cared for. Keep your workstation clear and clean. Make sure you're working within your limits. You got to know what you're doing and you use the right tools for the right job. And lastly, probably most importantly, is your personal safety. From the clothing that you're wearing to just general awareness around you in the kitchen. It's really important that you're paying attention. So as far as like your tools and equipment, you want to make sure everything's working properly. You want knives that are sharp, that are well cared for. You want a cutting board that's stable and not broken or cracked. You want your stove to work properly and all of your equipment. You don't want power cords running across your station. So that's important when you're working clean and clear. Also, you want to make sure you're using the right tools for the right job. You're not going to grab a paring knife when you should be using a carving knife to cut that giant roast on your cutting board. So make sure you're using the right tools for the right job. Next, moving on to food safety. Food safety is probably the most important part of the types of safety that we're talking about, because if you make somebody sick, even your own family won't trust you to cook anymore. And food safety covers everything from washing your hands to how you handle the food. So it's good to learn some basic food safety. And there's plenty of resources out there. The FDA has tips that they give on proper food safety, especially in the home. You could take a ServSafe class. You could even look up your regulatory authority and look up their guidelines, and see what they require for restaurants. Chances are, if it's required for a restaurant, if you follow the same practices at home, you're probably going to be handling food safely. Now, it's important that when you use the context of stock photos or a lot of these promotional things, they're invoking visualizations that are not really necessarily a good impression on what you're supposed to do in a kitchen. So you can see some examples here where they took photos that look really nice, but who's storing their raw proteins right next to bread, cheese, right next to the fruit? It's just a really bad example of what you should be doing with food. So again, you don't want to be that person, or you go to the grocery store and you're storing the chives that you're going to garnish tonight's meal with right next to the chicken, that's going to be your main course, and you end up making everybody sick, because really at the end of the day, it won't matter how good that final dish was if everybody's feeling the aftermath in the bathroom later. Now, move on to a couple other points that are also important, but probably not as important as safety. Number two is mise en place. Now, organizational skills are a huge benefit when you're working in the kitchen. Having everything you need exactly where you need it makes taking on any task much easier. And literally, mise en place means everything in its place. Really good example of this is from Anthony Bourdain, who said this: mise en place is the religion of all good line cooks. Do not F with a line cook's mise, meaning they're set up, they're carefully arranged supplies of sea salt, rough cracked pepper, softened butter, cooking oil, wine, backups, and so on. If you let your mise en place run down, get dirty and disorganized, you'll quickly find yourself spinning in place and calling for backup. That's what the inside of your head looks like now. Work clean. That's from Anthony Bourdain, and he couldn't be more right. You know, a lot of professional chefs, they're fanatical about mise en place and organizational skills, and it really does make a huge difference in how you cook. If you have a nice, clean, organized kitchen, it's also a bit of a morale booster. Next, we move on to number three, which is knife skills. It's good to practice some basic knife skills. You know, learning everything from learning how to hold a knife properly to the different knife cuts. And really, you don't need to learn every single knife cut that's out there, but at least learn the basic, more common ones like the large, medium, and small dice, a julienne, a bâtonnet. These are really the knife cuts that you're going to see most often in recipes, so just at least practice some of these. And we'll, again, go in more in depth later on a lot of these. I mean, I'll do some future videos as well on knife cuts. But really, practice this skill. It'll make everything a lot easier, and it's a really important skill to have. Next, we move on to number four, which is basic cooking terms and kitchen knowledge. Again, knowing things like kitchen measurement conversions, knowing different cooking terms like baking, grilling, frying, sauteing, roasting, and knowing the difference between these, so that way, whenever a recipe calls for you to saute something, you're not going to grab a stock pot and fill it with water. You're going to grab the saute pan instead. So it's really important that we learn these different basic terms so you can understand what you're doing when you're cooking. Also, it's good to understand what equipment that you need to have on hand to take on certain tasks. And again, you want to be able to grab that saute pan when a recipe calls for sauteing. Also, you don't want to grab a zester when a recipe calls for a colander to strain something. Just these little basic things just make cooking so much easier. Lastly, we go on to number five, which is basic cooking techniques and recipes. And this kind of plays off the last one that we just talked about. So not only do you just learn your basic cooking terms and your kitchen knowledge, but then you actually apply those into techniques and to following recipes. So some of the most basic recipes, like the 5 mother sauces, for example, not only learning these sauces gives you a great foundation to go on and create more different foods, because these 5 mother sauces are then used to create dozens and dozens of other sauces, but you learn great cooking techniques when you're learning how to make these sauces. Learning how to read a recipe in general, being able to break it down into larger portion sizes and smaller portion sizes, also really important. So learning, like I said, your conversions from that previous point is really important, being able to do this. And lastly, just being able to actually practice what you know. It's not just knowing what sauteing is, but it's actually being able to saute something. And again, all these skills take practice, and you'll get better at them the more you practice them. So in future videos, I'll go more in depth into these topics, and I'll also reference back to this video as well. So like I said, cooking is a skill that you must practice to get good at, but you should enjoy yourself while you're doing it. If it becomes an arduous task, you're going to shy away from it, and you're not going to want to do it. So building a good, strong foundation for cooking is the best way to build yourself up and to get better. So thank you for watching this video. That includes our top 5. Tell me what you think in the comments down below. Is there anything that you would absolutely add to this list? And if you've been cooking for a while, is there anything that you would wish you had known when you were starting out? Well, that's it from Ogres Kitchen. Time to sweep, mop, and go home. If you enjoyed today's video, please like and feel free to share. Subscribe for more content and hit the notification bell. For all those who are subscribed, thank you very much for your support. Keep those cauldrons bubbling and feast well.